Hi, I'm Jim from BATS Research and Training, and welcome to a sneak peek at the BAT License Training. The BAT License Training Program runs over 1 or 2 years, depending on the individual trainee's preference, and we have about 13 days together in total. 8 of those we spend online, covering the theoretical elements of the training. In October, we started our first session with this year's intake, and we covered the topic of legislation, licensing, and planning. And we're going to have a quick look at what we got up to. Now, this is a very important topic, clearly really, really important, but really, really dry as well. It's nobody's favorite topic. When we start off with BATS, we don't start off because of the legislation, but clearly we need to understand the legislation. We need to understand where it came from, what it protects, what it doesn't protect, etc., etc. And it's the legislation is the reason why many of us are lucky to work with BATS in the first place, the fact that we have jobs in this sector. So in order to try and make it a little bit more interesting and hopefully increase the likelihood of the information sticking in the brains once we've covered it, we run various exercises. So here's one where we're talking about some of the key words in the legislation. And we've set up this word search, and the idea is that we go through, the trainees pick out the words, we then have a bit of a discussion about that. So why is that word included in the legislation? Perhaps which piece of legislation does it come from, and the significance, and maybe kind of chew on that a little bit and kind of improve our understanding of the legislation. Moving on from legislation, we talk about licensing. So we cover the whole suite of different licenses. So whether that's personal survey licenses, whether it's class licenses, whether it's like in the photograph here or the video here, sorry, project licenses. So here I am undertaking some radio tracking of Barbara bats, and a project license would be required for this. It's the only license that allows that activity to take place. Moving on from licenses, then we think a little bit about the 3 tests. And this is kind of enshrined in the legislation. These are considerations that need to be given both at the planning application stage, but also at the licensing stage as well. And we have 3 tests. So we have no impact on favorable conservation status. We have overriding public interest or public health and safety, and no satisfactory alternative. So here we're discussing about the expansion of a town, heading closer and closer towards a woodland here that's well known for Bechstein's bats. And clearly we need houses, we need places for people to live. So that's where the public interest side comes from. In the video here, then, we have a photograph of a wonderful old hollow tree. And unfortunately, recently, someone set fire to this tree, jeopardizing the structural condition of this tree, potentially increasing the likelihood that it will fail. So we discussed a little bit about the public health and safety aspect of it as well. When we move on to planning, there's a whole suite of things that we talk about. In this clip here, we're talking a little bit about what would happen or what the implications for bats would be if planning permission was granted, but the presence of bats wasn't really considered. What would the knock-on effects of that be? So that's a very short sneak peek of the training session that we ran on legislation, licensing and planning. I will post another one next month on considerations for bat surveys. Hopefully see you then.